Welcome to another episode of Week by Week Sarazanmai, the Kunihiku Ikuhara show, which makes less and less sense and somehow more and more sense every single week. We're on week 10 this week, which means we're 2 episodes away from the finale. And things got a little crazy last week with things happening with Toikuji basically wrapping up his arc for the show, and he's about to make his redemption. We saw Enta get shot. He's in the hospital. He turned into a Kappa who is now on a death timer. Kazuki is doing all kinds of weird stuff, and we're finally getting the showdown between the Otter Kingdom and the Kappa Kingdom that we wanted. We saw a little bit more about the 2 policemen last episode, but we're probably going to see a little bit more about them this episode. And I'm also sick, so there's that also going. And without further ado, let's get started. This is how you tell things are in the end game now. We just transitioned from them being in their usual Kappa transformation place to being in the elevator of the Otter Kingdom in like 2 seconds. And also we just casually found out that Reo and Mabu are both former Kappa vassals of the prince, and somehow they like betrayed him, I guess. And that's why the whole Kawauso takeover happened. I'd be interested to know why they betrayed him in the first place. I don't remember exactly, just because we do this once a week, but I think that might have been covered in the post-credit scene where they were showing Ryo and Mabu getting into the Kappa Prince's tower and then leading like the Kawauso takeover of the Kappa Kingdom. I'm still not sure exactly what like significance the Otter Kingdom has versus the Kappa Kingdom. We kind of went over this, but to me it seems like looking at it from a different framework than what we've been looking at it for the past couple of weeks is that you can also look at it through the vision of like nature versus technology, right? Because the Kappa people are all very like into their nature stuff. Cucumbers, hot springs, sumo, these are all like very pastoral pastimes. And then you have like the Kappa, the Kawauso people. Reo and Mabu are both police officers, which is like generally not a naturalistic state for someone to be in. Then you have like all this technological imagery that's always associated with the Kappa people. The Kawauso people and the Kappa zombies and whatnot. Like, I think I mentioned this before, but when the Kappa zombies like enter our world, they kind of become like these Digimon-esque transformation sequences with the spiral and stuff, which always just reminded me of like cyberspace and like vague cyberspace imagery. And obviously we have this elevator, which is clearly some kind of technological thing. And the one episode where we saw Haruka kind of get tossed aside when he was about to get kind of shredded by these box things, that was also very technological. And at the time I said it reminded me of the factory with doors from Monsters, Inc. So it's interesting that there's also this other parallel that you can take. And I've been kind of looking at it from like a authoritarian versus like libertarian aspect of it, like a political standpoint. But you could also definitely look at it from more of like a framework of technology versus nature, and technology kind of wanting to like take a cold, more calculated look at things, which is why they're trying to identify like the criminal aspect of the desires that people have. And the Kappa people are trying to find like love inside the desires that people have. I just thought I'd mention that because of the clearly technological aspect of all the stuff that the Kawauso people are involved in. We don't really know what the reveal is going to be with how Reo's partner ends up coming back from the grave, what purpose he was brought back for. We do know it's something sinister though, so it can't be like anything really good. It could also be that he came back like as a spy to keep track of him or whatever. I just thought I'd mention that framework as well because it's a perfectly valid one, and I want to include as many valid interpretations as possible just because it gives people more to like jump off of when they're doing their own analysis in the comments and whatnot. I just thought that was interesting. Just want to address something that he said on the elevator. Now, we're getting towards the end game of the show, so like I said before with that acid rap reference, all the things are going to be coming together in sort of this weird like vocal harmony. So I'm probably going to be like stopping more and more often to talk about thematic stuff. So I'm trying not to do that just because I don't want to make a 45-minute episode about a 23-minute episode. That seems counterproductive to me somehow. So I really just want to point out that he said everyone wants to give up their connections for the sake of their desires, right? So if you look at that, in that particular sentence, what he seems to be alluding to is that people give up other people for the sake of themselves. It's like a egoist type approach is what he sees the world as, and he sees himself as fighting against that. But for us, it seems weird that he's doing that because he's the one who's taking people's desires and making it seem like they're completely, like useless and don't belong in society by like turning them into Kappa zombies and eventually them ending up dead. So it's weird that he would take this approach when it seems that he's working against having connections, because these people want to have connections. The people that he's criminalizing actually do want to have connections, but he's not allowing them to, for it to be that way. He would rather prefer them not have connections and have connections on their own terms. I just thought that was interesting as well. He seems to be on a like individual versus collective type thing, whereas his actions kind of speak against that. So they're being very literal about this. Like in episode 3 or episode 4, like way back, I mentioned like this idea of they seem to have this binary and they're very interested in deconstructing the binary. Like they don't want the binary to exist. Like, or in particular, the Kappa people don't. Like when the boys go and defeat the Kappa zombie, they find that whoever the dude is, his desire is rooted in love. Like he finds a thing that they're setting up as a binary in each other. And here we have the literal binary of the dark Kepi and the light Kepi, and they have to fuse in order to defeat the Kawauso kingdom. Sorry, I keep confusing Kawauso and Kappa. I'm a little sick today. Called it binary. They set it up a long time ago. It's definitely paying off now. We're only in episode 10, but it looks like things are moving at like a breakneck pace. I wonder where we're going to get to with episode 12. Or is it going to resolve next episode and then we have one episode to tie up all the loose ends? I feel like a lot of the loose ends are tied up already, but hey, this show is definitely, next level in terms of how many threads it can handle at once without losing track of where everything is going. So for sure, show, like do whatever you want. My life is in your hands. Oh yes, give me a good dream world. Ever since we saw that one episode of Mob Psycho 2 where he goes into the dream world with set up by that other guy and he gets trapped there and it's his worst nightmare and he finds a way to escape, I've just been all about dream worlds. Give it to me. I want to see you break out of the doldrums through your own willpower. I'm all in for this. Show me what you got, Enta. Okay, so this is going to be another weird reference, and I know I just paused it like 4 seconds ago, but so when we have these deep fakes in the world right now, and I don't know if you've ever listened to one, but if you go and listen to a deep fake where they like use a person's voice to make them say different things, one of the first things you notice about it is that this weird like amount of like vocal distortion. It sounds almost like the voice that they're doing for Kazuki right now in this scene. It's actually really creepy because they're doing that. Because if you see the scrolling text go up there, it reinforces again like that technology versus nature kind of dialectic we talked about earlier. In that the digital world kind of like removes certain aspects of the natural world and such, but they don't like claim to say that they both can't coexist because the Kuro Kepi and the real Kepi are going to fuse together in order to defeat the Kawa Usos. I don't know how much sense this is making, but the point is that I just wanted to point out that his voice sounds very deep fakey, and for me, someone who's pretty paranoid about this kind of stuff, about deep fakes and just like security in general, that strikes an additional chord of creepiness. It seems very apparent from this, like people value connections over desire, or at least that's the message that they want to send us with this show, because we've seen one, Enta break the dish, saying I don't want desire to overcome the connection that I have with Kazuki, and 2, now Mabu's like his perversion or his literal fall from grace as he falls. He says, if I can't be with you, if I can't be connected with you because of my, untimely passing, then at least let my desires be fulfilled. Then again, setting up the hierarchy that connections are above desire. I'm interested to see how they're going to play with that. Slight modification to what I've been saying so far. I don't think the binary is necessarily desire and love. It seems to be connection and desire. And connection could be like friendship, like family or anything. Love also could be substituted in that, but it seems to transcend that in the sense that it doesn't have to be like a selfless kind of thing. You could just be like friends or whatever, and that's fine. And that's still accepted in the binary that they're setting up. yeah, just wanted to say that. Let's see what happens with Mabu. When he falls in that drum, is he going to unleash the Kurokepi? Perhaps. Very happy that the song is back. It's been a few episodes since we got this song, you know? Number one song of the show so far. I love this song, and I love the sequence that follows this Kappa Zombie thing. I Have Missed You. The first 5 or 6 episodes, they had this whole sequence, and they were like, oh, you're getting used to this? Here, take a gander at episode 6, 7, 8, and 9, where none of this stuff comes up, and then we're back to it with episode 10. Genuinely excited to hear the song again. Here we go. But this time, there are 2 otter policemen in the background when he's singing the song, because, you know, it's Reo that's singing the song and not the boys. So, here we go. If that didn't get you in the feels, then I don't know what will. So they're showing that even when it seems like there's no connection, there is a connection. Because remember, one of the episode titles from the previous thing was even when we're not connected, we're connected, right? And they're reinforcing that again with this whole thing. And Reo and Mabu have been like this floating presence over the past 9 episodes where they kind of just show up and they do their thing. And they've been the big mystery of the show. Like, they're around, they work for the Kawauso people. We don't know why they do that. We kind of know that they were involved with the Kappa people before. And now we found out that they were just full-blown Kappas that used to work for the Kappa Kingdom, but they got turned on because they thought that, you know, Mabu would come back or whatever. And that didn't seem to be the case. And now we find out that the reason that he wasn't affectionate with his partner, that he didn't want to express his connection with Reo, is because his heart would literally explode. Like, he couldn't take the pressure or the shock of actually saying that to his partner. And that's why he didn't say it. That's why he was, you know, unaffectionate, dispassionate or whatever. And then when he finds this out, he's like, no, don't say it. He's been like, why can't you express your affection to me all this time? And then now when he is, you know, like he's willing to do it, he says no, because he understands the consequences of what will happen if he does do that. This is probably like one of the best endings to this arc that we possibly could have imagined, right? They're like this loving couple that have had like circumstances thrown against them, and just things happen to them that you wouldn't normally expect to happen to people, and they haven't really tackled it in the best possible way. They grew cold and distant, but underneath it all, there was still that connection, you know. And the Kawauso like guy tried to overcome that by like offering you know, to just say you can maintain this connection if you pretend it doesn't exist, but people remember, even if we're not connected, we're still connected. So they were still connected through all that time. So it didn't matter, and in the end, we get this emotional little scene with the Sarazanmai playing on what we already know about the Sarazanmai to just take it to the next level. And even in this one, there's whoever sings the song in all these Sarazanmais, the song works perfectly because everyone has someone that they're connected to, and it just works. And this show is really good at showing these connections, because when I was watching the OP again, I noticed that literally every person in the OP has someone that they're thinking of, and they're just walking us through all the connections that these people have to each other. And even the people who we don't think are connected. Like Reo and Mabu are part of the Kappa Kingdom. That's how they're connected to everyone else. And then like Toei and Kazuki were connected because they had this encounter on the bridge that they don't even remember. And just all these connections that you wouldn't even think. And even when you think you're not connected, you're connected. Like when Kazuki is like, oh, Haruka, you're not my brother or whatever. And then he ends up having even more affection for him afterwards when he finds out that, oh, hey, it doesn't matter. Even if you're not really my full brother, you're my half brother, it's fine. We're still extremely connected, like I grew up with you and all that stuff. The show is really good at showing that, like illustrating it in a visual context and like explaining it without like overly explaining it. Like it doesn't just tell us, it shows us through the characters' actions. And that's really the best way to have any kind of explanation occur, is just have the characters act as if that thing happened, which it did, and we can like read between the lines and understand what's happening. So good job, show, and the animation in this sequence is always great. They did all that for a one-off in episode 10. We're 10 episodes in. This is when like the budget starts to thin out. But I had mentioned a few episodes previously that they were cutting down a little bit on those fancy little animation cuts. And just to address something from the previous episode, yes, I was wrong when I said that it was 3D. It wasn't 3D. It was just a Sakuga cut. And I did talk about how it was Sakuga with the Naruto fight references and whatnot. I just mistakenly thought it was 3D. Forgive me if you will. So even in episode 10, they're still pulling out these really nice animation cuts. This show, one core or not, has been one of the most consistent shows in terms of just how it looks and how it's paced and how the story is told of pretty much any show that I've seen this year or last year. Very strong show. Let's keep going. Okay, so let just because we're focused on wordplay and puns and metaphors in that sense, let's not forget that visual metaphor is one of the most powerful forms of metaphor. So if we go back a couple seconds and take a look at that bridge, he just blew up a bridge. A bridge being a connection between two sides of something. While he's, in rage over his partner having broken their connection. Okay, show. We get it. We get it. You know things have started to get weird when Haruka is seeing stuff in his dreams that makes this little sense. He's basically summing up all the thematic elements of this show so far in like the cutest possible way that only Haruka could do. The big circle seems to be like this recurring trait that happens. It's like three things that you think don't really exist together, but then they somehow do exist together. Like the one this episode was no beginning, no end, no connection. So is it saying that the beginning and the end have no connection? Because if you think of beginning and the end, they're like one of these classic opposite kind of like oxymoron type things. A thing can't be the beginning and the end of something, but a thing can have a beginning and an end. So the beginning and the end are connected in some way. So you can't say that they're, like there's no end in a circle. The beginning and the end are the same. There's no difference between them, right? Interesting? Maybe not. Just thought I'd mention it. Also, she just said the world is at another point of trial, and we have to know whether we're connected or not. What year is it? Current year 2019, and what is like the majority, like overwhelming thing that people talk about when they talk about politics or, like all the issues that are facing our world today? We're all talking about how we can't make our different ideas meet, that we're somehow separated, that we're not able to connect and discuss over what we really want to do. We're kind of just standing on our own islands, refusing to meet in the middle. The timeliness of this show is a little too suspicious to be coincidence, Clearly he's trying to say something here, Mr. Kunihiko Ikahara. I see what you're doing there, buddy. I mean, it's not that subtle because she literally said the world is at another point of trial, but definitely we get it. We're catching your message for sure.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Oh my god, what a way to end the episode. So when I talk about this show being paced well, it's because it ends on a cliffhanger every episode and you're left wanting more, and the show moves from beat to beat within the episode so well. Really, you could watch 10 episodes of the show back to back and feel like you've only watched like 3, because it moves so quickly from idea to idea that you're just like, you can barely keep pace of what's happening. It doesn't leave you behind by any means. Some shows, when they try to like tackle heady themes or like talk about stuff that really they have no idea what they're doing, they kind of just leave everyone behind, and you're struggling after the fact to try to put together the pieces of what they wanted you to catch at the first viewing. But this show, you get enough from the first viewing that you're not disinterested with the rest of the show and you keep going back for more. But at the same time, when you do rewatch it, you catch these little like foreshadowing instances or references they make to future episodes that you catch when you go back and watch it again. This is definitely a show for more than one viewing, for sure. Okay, now we watch the post credits and we can talk about the episode. So the big circle is what everything within the big circle is connected, and everything outside the big circle is desperately trying not to be connected. So it's kind of like, does the set of all sets contain itself type of deal. If everything inside the circle is connected, then everything outside the circle is not connected. Then what is it like the all-encompassing set? Okay, let's not talk about math. Let's talk about other stuff for a little bit. So it seems like at the end of the day, Toei is unable to, put aside that his brother died. He like someone else mentioned in the previous episode, he knows that his brother's a bad person, but he just doesn't care because it is his brother at the end of the day. And to him, that's the most important thing, is that his brother was there to take care of him and do stuff for him. And he doesn't really care if his brother's a bad person or kills people, because he sees it as that is just who his brother is. And he is only doing those things because, one, he thinks that, or the philosophy that his brother holds, which he has been unable to change, is that only bad people survive in this world. So if you want to survive, you have to be bad. There's no other choice. And he was really bad in the last episode where he got killed. I think it's going to be really interesting to see how they eventually bring Toei into the circle. I think it's interesting that the metaphor is a circle. Also, I just realized that every single time they battle a Kappa zombie, they do it on a bridge, aka connections, visual metaphors. When Reo shot the thing with the exploding gun, he literally blew up 2 bridges. He's blowing up bridges, aka connections. Blowing up bridges is what you do when you burn your connections behind you. Visual metaphors, verbal metaphors, wordplay everywhere. This show is like some next level stuff. And this is, people have been saying this is kind of reminiscent of Kunihiko Ikuhara's work in general. And the other time that people really dug into this was with Revolutionary Girl Utna. But that was like 39 episodes. This is only 12. To fit a thematic work of that depth into like such a short amount of episodes and to still have it be coherent. Like if you want to go really in depth and be like symbolic and visual with your metaphors, it's going to descend into like some incoherent, like indiscernible type of like just imagery and flashing lights and like think of the end of 2001, right? You can interpret that a million different ways, and the reason you can do that is because it's non-specific, vague, and abstract. And this show is non-specific, vague, and abstract, but only insofar as it allows itself to be. It doesn't go too far in that way because you can't really watch 12 episodes of the ending of 2001. It's not going to be entertaining for that long. It was only entertaining for the few short minutes that it existed because it was only a few short minutes. If you extrapolate that to like 12 episodes, you're going to get bored after 3 minutes unless you're extremely into like avant-garde filmmaking where they just flash images at you and you somehow discern meaning from that. I can't deal with that, obviously. So I'm glad that they went this way and there's an actual story and characters, because I think it is to some extent easier to convey themes through these like vehicles rather than to just have them projected into your brain. And have you interpret them like some kind of modernist like artwork or something. That being said, the Kawa Usos are out in full force. Kurokepi is out, and he's every time they've shown him, he's always said darkness, right? And darkness is like what exists outside of the circle is what they're setting it up as, and it's just a lack of connections in general. So we saw Reo and how he dealt with darkness is just lashing out at the people around him when he lost his last connection, and he in turn was shot. He had to be killed in order to quell that kind of aggression that comes from a lack of connection. Is that like a message? Is he trying to say something there by saying that like when people don't have any connections, they tend to lash out and be violent? And I don't think it's unintentional that Reo had a gun and he started shooting people, because this might be a stretch for some of you, but it seems like with the amount of like violence that we have in our world today, Kunihiko Ikuhara is trying to say like that arises from a lack of connections that people have. And then when you don't have connections, or when you lose the connections that you had that were valuable to you, you tend to not understand how to go through with things and just kind of lash out at the people around you and just do things that you generally would not, allow yourself to do if you did have connections who would hold you accountable and be like, hey, why are you doing these things? The 2 people who lost their connections this episode, Reo and Toei, both had guns and both shot people or attempted to shoot people. And Toei, even after he realized that Enta was saved and the dish was gone and his hope was gone, he just gives into the darkness, which literally descends from above and swallows him whole. Literally swallows him whole, swallowed by darkness. Okay. Visual metaphors indeed. So next episode, I don't even know what we're going to see. We're going to see dark Toei. Toei's been kind of dark this whole time, but he's going to get even darker for some reason, which will eventually lead to the finale. I didn't think with the amount of characters that they set up that they could go this deep about their interactions and their lives. But somehow with even only a small cast of characters and not too much complication, they've been able to go really in depth into the human psyche and what makes people tick. And even with a relatively few amount of connections, which is probably all you can juggle in such a low episode count, they've been able to show us things that really would have taken a much bigger cast of characters and a far more expansive plot to arrive at, right? Because if you think of the plot, not much has actually happened. There have been twists, of course, and I couldn't recite all the twists off the top of my head right now. But the plot feels like it hasn't really moved that much. Like 3 friends meet up, they turn into Kappa, and then like they beat 4 Kappa zombies, and then they eventually have to deal with all their personal issues that they brought into the Kappa transformations in the first place. it seems like a really good setup. And I wish he would make more shows. I understand that it's difficult to make shows this deep and like this time consuming all the time. It's not possible. But if you did like one every 2 years, I would be totally fine with that. It's been many, many years since his last one. And I see why. Like, it takes a lot of time to gestate all these thoughts and to make all these connections and visual metaphors. Clearly, a lot of time and effort has been put into this show, as with any animated show, just because of the nature of the medium. But this show in particular, a lot of attention has been paid to the writing and like he directed the show, so obviously he had a lot to do with the storyboards as well. Great show, great episode. We're getting to that climax, and I really want to see where it's going to top out at, because this show, for me, is already like a 9 out of 10. And if it nails the landing, it could easily be a 10 out of 10 show, because I really don't think any part of it is missing, or it's missing anything that would lead me to knock a point off of it. Like, the animation has always been great. The character designs have always been great. The voice acting has been consistently top tier. It's been entertaining as well as emotional in the times that it needed to be. The comedy has been on point. Just the writing has been superb the whole time. The music has been unique. Like, this show is just next level, and I don't really understand people who rate this below other shows this season, because this is like an easy anime of the year contender for me, just right off the bat. That being said, I'm getting extremely long-winded at this point. This is easily the longest episode by a good 5 or 6 minutes, so I'm just going to end it right there. Let me know in the comments why I was wrong, or tell me about some of your interpretations of what you thought of this episode. That's it for this week. Thanks for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you next week.